IB Nation Sports Talk is up and rolling into a brand new week along with Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Stiers. Happy Veterans Day to all our veterans out there. Hello.
To you, sir. Happy Veterans Day to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I was telling you, I got the call from my dad this afternoon. He was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm kind of in the middle of work right now." Happy Veterans Day. So we went through that whole thing. But we've got a lot of veterans, who watch the shows, listen to the shows, and all that kind of stuff. Happy Veterans Day to you. Happy Veterans Day, even though they don't have a specific day, to dependents of veterans. Happy Veterans Day to them as well. I was thinking about it the other day with Veterans Day coming up. It's especially like if you were a career military, like because you're basically serving as well. If you're married to someone, or like Marcus Freeman's case, like a career, parent who is in the military, you're basically doing your service as well, because you're packing up every 2 to 3 years and moving someplace else around the country or around the world. So
that's a really, really good point. I didn't even think about that. You're absolutely right. Your lovely bride did not have to deal with that because you were already done.
Didn't know her at that point. That's right. That's exactly right. Well, we've got a lot that we're going to get into. Speaking of Marcus Freeman, so we've got some comments from him, of course, from his Monday press conference. A lot of interesting stuff came up today. I don't know if you were able to check it out, Vince, but
I'm only laughing because it's queued up on my computer. I watched the first 5 minutes of the press conference, and then got taken away and never got a chance to get back to it. So
all right.
I got 5 minutes under my belt, though.
So it's all going to be new to you.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
All right. Well, even better. You'll be hearing it fresh. You'll be hearing it live. Before we get into that, I do want to tell you about MyBookie, the one sports book that's got your back. No fluff, no second guessing, just straight up action with you in total control. At MyBookie, it's never been about guessing. It's about giving you the edge, so every bet you place comes with confidence and a plan. So if you know football and you love to win, check out MyBookie, because it's made just for you. And if you're new to the game, step it up by using our promo code IRISH. It'll double your bankroll with a 100% deposit bonus right from the jump. That's more money, more power to make winning plays. Bet anything, anytime, from anywhere with MyBookie, the sports book that gives you control and rewards every moment of play. So Chris Tyree's coming back to town, Vince.
Yeah, it's kind of a I don't want to say it's a forgotten topic. Maybe I'm just speaking from my own experience, but it's like,
honestly, I forgot until it came up right off the bat today.
That's what I'm saying.
Right over my head. But then I was like, oh yeah, duh, Chris Tyree is coming back. DK asked why I didn't ask the same Chris Tyree question as two other reporters. If asked a third time, he may have answered it differently. How do you know I wasn't one of the first ones to begin with? Maybe I just disguised my voice and slipped in one of the first two. So
there's like a handful of people that I would imagine asked that particular question, but that's not important. But there's certain people that really love to like dig into some of that kind of stuff, as opposed to like, the actual analysis of the games.
Very true. The first one that came, I think it was actually the very first question of the press conference. And valid point, is there anything that the Irish are going to have to guard against? Because you've got a guy who just played for the program and now he's at Virginia, in terms of signs, signals, system, any of that kind of stuff. So here's what Marcus Freeman said.
That's not a concern of ours. We got a new offensive coordinator, obviously, new signals, new terminology. So I'm not concerned about that, but really respect Chris as a person, as a football player. I'm just glad he's got his Notre Dame degree, and he's a talented football player that we'll have to account for in the special teams battle and also the offensive phase.
Doing a little bit of everything over there at Virginia, but I hadn't thought about the signs and the signals kind of thing. But as he said, not as much of a you've got a new offensive coordinator, new coaches, the whole thing. No worries on those lines.
Yeah, and I think that's all. Those are all really valid points. That's not just coach speak and word salad stuff. Like, that's legit. Like, it is a new offense. It is a new quarterback. It's new signals. It's new. There's a lot of new compared to what was there last year, right? There's a lot of new receivers. There's, there's a lot of new, and I don't think, they change stuff up every week because obviously there are sign stealers and all that kind of stuff, and so I don't really think that's even going to be an issue. I was more worried about, just Chris Tyree as a weapon that you've got to account for, as opposed to him trying to steal your stuff.
And he's had, I don't know, like, he's still a receiver there at Virginia. Okay. That's notable. 22 catches for 124 yards. So it's not exactly like he's gone to Virginia,
like the world on fire,
and lit it up. His best game was actually just this past week against Pittsburgh. 4 catches for 42 yards. He's only ran the ball 3 times for 25 yards. Hasn't scored a touchdown this season. I thought maybe, especially at a place like that where they could use some talent, use some speed, maybe he'd light it up a little bit more. But it's been really kind of along the lines of, what we saw at Notre Dame, basically.
Yeah, that's kind of wild, actually. I figured he would be much more of a weapon of theirs offensively and special teams, for that matter. I'm shocked he hasn't gotten the end zone yet. That's nutty.
I thought so too. Has not done it, but hey, we'll see. We'll see what it looks like. Yeah. I wonder. It's sort of been like we've seen some guys over the years. I think that probably Chris Tyree and Phil Jurkovec are probably 2 of the more prominent former Notre Dame guys who have come back to Notre Dame Stadium. And obviously the thing with Jurkovec, like everything that happened to him between Boston College and Pittsburgh, and he was a complete non-factor when he came back with Pitt last year. But Chris Tyree, maybe you could make the case that he is, the most prominent. DK says he should have stayed, and I was actually kind of leading to that. Like, would he have been better off? Would Notre Dame have been better off if Chris Tyree had stayed for another year?
Look, he's a weapon, and I do feel like, Mike Denbrock would have done a good job of getting him the football and maybe some creative ways and some things of that nature. I think he could have benefited, especially, again, look, hindsight is 20/20. You look at what he's done at Virginia up to this point. I think he could have easily had those stats at Notre Dame,
right?
And then been a part of a better team overall as well. I think he should have stayed at the end of the day. I thought he should have stayed in the first place. Was he being used to his fullest extent? No, I think we can all agree on that. But and obviously Mike Denbrock was not hired when he left, and maybe that would have changed his mind.
And those were, I think, Chancey Stuckey was still around for that. It was right around that same time. So
good point.
There were a lot of different factors that were still in play when he made that decision to leave.
Yeah. At the end of the day,
it feels to me like he would have been better off just staying here, even though he would have had to still learn a new system and all that kind of stuff. I just feel like he would have been better off if he was still here.
Right. But agreed.
When you look at how things have played out for him so far this year. Now, Notre Dame, you may have heard, and we're going to be predicting college football playoff rankings in rapid fire in a little bit. Notre Dame, playoff contender. So how do you handle that?
Every game, this game is the Super Bowl. And no matter if we were in the playoff hunt or not, that's the same mindset we have, man, is that you get 12 of these guaranteed opportunities, right? And I told the team in the locker room, we're guaranteed one more opportunity here in Notre Dame Stadium for these seniors. And so to think about anything other than that, you're doing this game a disservice. Like, they work 300 days a year for 12 guaranteed opportunities, no matter if this game determines if we make the playoffs or not. And so coming from a player, coming from a coach, like, this is what you work for all year long. And so to make a game mean less than another game because you're going to make the playoffs or not, you don't love this game of football, man. And that's the mindset we have, man. Every week is the Super Bowl.
I mean, the two things that stood out every week is the Super Bowl, but you work 300 days a year for 12 guaranteed opportunities. Like, think about like that schedule and the fact that, like you're essentially interspersed over the course of an entire 365-day year. You're getting, 2 full months, like you're not getting much downtime for ultimately what you're playing for week in and week out once that season starts.
That was coach speak right there. The 12 guaranteed, blah, blah, like that.
I realize that.
But I mean, the point you're making is absolutely correct. You spend 353 days working for 12. Like I totally agree with that. And there's not many professions in the world where that's the case. You know what I mean? And so I completely agree with that part. It's just he's gone to that well an awful lot. I hear him say that all the time.
No, he doesn't. No, but I mean, what other attitude can you have? Like especially, like his point is even going past the work that you're putting into it and 12 guaranteed games and all that kind of stuff, but you're playoff contenders. Ultimately, what do you have to do? You have to put on the blinds and you have to put on the sheet, like the blinders and the shields and whatever, and you still have to focus week to week and take every week like it's the biggest game of the season. I mean, that's part of the lesson learned by Northern Illinois, right? Like, you obviously, just because you're a playoff contender, you can't lose your focus. I think that's the bigger picture.
Absolutely. Thing. Well, and we'll see what happens tomorrow night in the CFP rankings.
Coach speak or not.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And look, he's still absolutely correct. Like, they still have everything in front of them. They still hold their destiny in their own hands to a degree. Like, I still think those are the coaching points to me, is that, there's no margin for error, guys. Like, not only do we have to win these games, but we got to win them convincingly. And they took it. And that was, we're like, hey, they got to win these last 4 games convincingly. Well, you can check off the first one. Convincing win. They controlled that game, start to finish, convincing win. All right. Now you got to go do it to Virginia. And then you got to go do it to Army. And then you got to go do it to USC.
Yes.
And they'll be fine. I think that's what you've got to tell them. I mean, there's no margin for error at this point, and it's been that way since September 9th or whatever day it was that they lost to Northern Illinois.
I mean, you can poke fun of it, and there's every reason to make fun of it, but you get 12 guaranteed opportunities at Notre Dame. You get 12 guaranteed opportunities down there in Baton Rouge as well. Who's in better shape? Who's got it better right now?
Oh, boy, you brought up LSU and Michigan in the same sentence. Man, good thing it's Veterans Day.
It's actually Jim Harbaugh, not Michigan. So,
well, I mean, still, he took that to Michigan, or took that to the Chargers with him, I feel like. But, oh, man, that's rough sledding there, pal.
I had to make you feel good. So I was originally going to use this next one in rapid fire, but as anyone who watched the press conference today knows, a lot of stuff came up about handling the second half, like when you've got a blowout like you had against Florida State, in terms of playing young guys and, and we're going to hear some of the specific comments about that. The question I was going to use was about Todd Blackledge. I don't know if you heard about the Todd Blackledge comment. I know there's a lot of Todd Blackledge backlash.
I don't know what specifically we're talking about him criticizing Marcus Freeman for running up the score.
Okay, that's where we're going here.
Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, there's this thing called an outline that I send you like before every show, Vince. Like,
I have it pulled up.
If you scan the outline, you might have an idea of what's
on a different
coming up in any given show.
Got it right here.
All right. So this is all off the cuff, by the way, for the people who are commenting on the YouTube. over the weekend. So Todd Blackledge, obviously different crew than usual. Like everyone thought, hey, no Jason Garrett. This is going to be awesome. We get Todd Blackledge, and now you get Todd Blackledge in the booth, and the old Penn State quarterback is throwing it out there. Like giving it to Marcus Freeman. Apparently, he said that he was surprised that Notre Dame was throwing the football still with Steve Angeli and a lot of the reserves in at the end of the game. So again, I've got a lot of comments from Freeman that'll sort of relate to this, but let's just talk about this general sort of philosophy first without hearing what Freeman has to say, because he wasn't asked specifically about Blackledge, but he was just asked a lot about how you handle that second half and focus and, what the reps mean and all that we'll talk about here in a minute. So just your initial thoughts on hearing Blackledge's criticism of continuing with that game plan when you've got all the second team guys in the game and you're winning by a bunch.
Well, there's a couple of different routes that I'd like to go with this. Is number one, yes, Notre Dame had their backups in. Florida State didn't. It was their first team defense out there. And
you see that a lot, like, regardless of level, like we would see that where when we were doing high school games that, like one side calls off the dogs and they've got their reserves out there, and the other side is like, oh, we're keeping our starters in the game. And especially if you've got your starters in the game, what you're supposed to make you're basically just supposed to make Steve Angeli hand off, while the other team has got starters out there, or whoever they've got out there.
That's not Notre Dame's problem to me. I mean, look, yeah, you got the second team in there plus walk-ons. Honestly, like Justin Fisher got a carry, and the kid from Central Michigan got a carry and
a catch. Fish. Yeah,
exactly. So like, these aren't guys that are normally getting playing time, right? There's only 2 more guaranteed times at Notre Dame Stadium, and at that point there was 1 1/4, right? This is an opportunity to get those guys in the game and get them some playing time. And why do you just have to bang your head up against the wall and just run it up the middle? Let these guys run the offense, because if Notre Dame has learned anything this season, it's that guys can get injured on a moment's notice, right? And the next guy is going to have to be ready to come in. Well, a lot of those guys that were on the field are the next guys. And getting them legitimate game reps, not just coming in and running off tackle and run and dive and all of those different things. Like, those are legit moments for kids to get playing time and to play the game of football in Notre Dame Stadium in a Notre Dame uniform. I don't have a problem with it. Like, it'd be one thing if it was a bunch of walk-ons that Florida State had out there and Notre Dame had their walk-ons. I still wouldn't have a problem with it, but you could at least maybe make the argument they still had their first team defense out there. The first team. And
it's only running it up if Notre Dame still has its starters on the field in that situation.
Absolutely.
That's the only time. Like, they had pulled everybody, obviously, and it doesn't matter who Florida State's got on the other side. Like you said, Notre Dame's got a mixed bag of guys, second string, some third string, some walk-ons. Like, we've said it before, like, as a starter, part of the deal is you earn the right as a starter for those guys behind you to get their chance to go out there and play. Like, the standard is set. You do your job, and those guys behind you, all your teammates, they get the chance to play as well. And once they get out there on the field, it's not Marcus Freeman's job to protect the feelings of Mike Norvell or any other coach or players or whatever on the other side. His job is to develop his program and develop his players in that program. What Steve Angeli or Dion Colzie or anybody else, what are any of them going to get out of just going out there and handing the ball off a few times? Well, it's a Saturday night. They want to play too, and they deserve their right to go out there and run a full offense. That's how, again, that's how you develop these guys. And somebody made the point about Angeli. Like, this gives Angeli, whatever decision he ends up making in December or next spring, in terms of portals, if he wants to go someplace, this gives Steve Angeli actual game film that he can put out there, and anyone else who wants to make that decision as well. It gives all of these guys actual game film that they can go put out there to help better themselves for the future if that's the decision that they decide to make, that they, that their career is going to be better off if they go someplace else.
Well, and the other thing is the charge to Marcus Freeman is to win a national championship, right? Like that's his ultimate goal. Yes, it's to graduate players. Yes, it's to do a lot of other things, but his ultimate goal is to win a national title. You've got a better opportunity to win a national title the higher ranked you are in the playoff. Obviously, it's get in the playoff. And second, it's get the best possible opportunity in the playoff. I'm sorry, but the way we're looking right now at the whole college football playoff thing, you got to make a statement every week. Mm-hmm. And it's Marcus Freeman's job to make a statement. I'm sorry. I've never been a fan of style points and all of that. And I don't think that that's what this was. But at the same time, you've got to make a case for Notre Dame. He's the head coach at Notre Dame. It's his job to get Notre Dame in the best possible position.
That's the same as, okay, so Florida State is still running its offense, when they're driving downfield and Luke Talich jumps that pass and runs it back the other way. So Florida State's allowed to throw the football when they're still trailing and like regardless of what the score, again, like was Luke Talich just supposed to, like swat that down or just let that guy make the catch and run it into the end zone because, he has some obligation to the score of the game? Of course not. They're out there. They're playing, Todd Blackledge should know that, like the guy obviously played at Penn State, the guy's been around for a long time. It's one thing, like I said, it's one thing if you've still got the starters out there and you're going about that game plan, and even in that case, it's still the job of the guys on the other side to stop them. But it's a completely different situation when you're talking about reserves versus starters doing that stuff.
It was also Todd Blackledge that said that Penn State tight end should be a Heisman Trophy finalist. So let's, take what Todd Blackledge says as a grain of salt, because I'm not super impressed with his analysis or anything else when it came to that game. So, look, Marcus Freeman has to do what he has to do to get Notre Dame where they want to go. That's my biggest thing, and I don't think he did anything wrong. It's not like they ran like a reverse throwback or something like that on that.
It's all just basic stuff.
It was a fade route to the corner of the end zone. And if you're starting corner, and mind you, Todd Blackledge said that the corners are the strongest part of Florida State's defense.
Yeah.
So if they can't defend a slot corner and against the 7th or 8th wide receiver on Notre Dame's roster, that's a you problem, Florida State, not a Notre Dame problem.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So here are some thoughts from Freeman. He talked about the value of those reserves getting those game reps.
Game reps are so valuable. They're so valuable. You can practice, man. But to get some of those younger guys, game reps is huge. To look at some of the guys that we had play against Florida State, like that's big. That's something that you probably never thought as you looked to the future would have really happened. And it's awesome. And they got to understand that you got to be ready for the opportunity, man. You got to be ready for this opportunity no matter when it happens. And hopefully they value that and we'll use it as we continue to move forward.
And, going back to kind of what you were talking about with who some of the reserves were, like not everybody gets to travel. And even
that's great.
There's no guarantee that you're going to get a blowout situation like this again, where you get as many people in, especially in a home game situation, for them to be able to play, like that. It's not just a home game situation, but it's also unique in that it was the only night game that they had this season. So to give those guys the chance to go out there and actually not just run around, but be actual contributors and play real football. There's no guarantees that you're going to have the chance to do that again this season.
100%. And a lot of those guys aren't going to make the practice squad. The travel squad, excuse me.
Yeah.
And so this is it. They've got this game and then they've got the Virginia game, and there's no guarantees the Virginia game is going to go the same way. It should be similar, right? But there's no guarantees. Virginia has a way better record than Florida State does. Mm-hmm. So this is a great opportunity for those guys to get in. And again, some of those guys are a play away from being counted on in the playoffs. So They need game reps, man.
No, and I mean, that's, at the end of the day, as you said, like, look at the injuries that Notre Dame has sustained. Howard Cross went out the other night. Donovan Heinisch came in and played really well behind him, obviously. But when you look at the Viper position, where you lost two guys over there and you're moving guys around and you had to have another guy come back from injury, these guys deserve to be able to go out there and get real experience and figure out, how to play the game. And something else that Marcus Freeman talked about was when these young guys get in, holding them to the same standard as the starters once they're out there on the field.
I hope our players, maybe that aren't starting, understand it. At any moment you can be put into the game. And I think what we have to do as coaches, the greatest compliment, they might not like it, the greatest compliment we can give those guys that go in the game is to hold them to the standard that we hold anybody to. Like, we can't make excuses for guys that are backups or guys that maybe don't practice as much with the older guys for their play. Like, we hold them to a high standard, the same standard we hold the starters to. And I hope, maybe not in the moment, because it's never fun to, get challenged and, maybe criticize at times, but I hope they look back and appreciate that they're held to the same standard as the starters.
No, and I mean, again, Vince, like, you go back and you hear him talk about that, holding him to the same standard. Again, like, this is not just about putting stuff on film, but it is also about, okay, now you've played in a game, and now your position coaches, like, you're going to get critiqued as well. When you're out there, again, that's part of the learning process.
I mean, 100%. And it's always good, like you said, for guys that maybe want to transfer to get game film. It's good for evaluation purposes going into next year, because look, when they're trying to make position decisions in the spring and everything else, if they've got good game footage that they can go back to, they're going to use that in their evaluation. So those things are always going to be key and important. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll get into the full discussion of this in a second. I've got DK's comment there because that's actually the question that was coming up next. Evaluating the players in blowout situations. The question was asked, he used air quotes when he asked it. Garbage time was the phrase used.
Absolutely. You evaluate the play. You evaluate the competition they're going against, but you truly evaluate, hey, can this guy be trusted? Can he get his job done at a high level? And that's part of the evaluation. The other part of evaluation, if you're considering playing a guy earlier, is going to be in practice. Can you consistently get your job done in practice and in the opportunities you have in a game? But we definitely have a lot of value put into those plays.
Yeah, so he's talking about the value of, obviously the players in those situations. DK says he thought Freeman was going to school the reporter that called it garbage time. He didn't respond to the garbage. Personally, again, like, as someone who's broadcast a lot of games, it's not it's fairly commonly referred to as garbage time. It's never a term that I've used because, again, like,
that's kind of disparaging.
When those backups get in the game, it's not garbage time to them.
Correct.
It's important time to them. And again, like, when you hear Marcus Freeman talking about just the importance of the development and all that stuff, it's far from garbage time. It's important developmental time when those players get out there on the field.
And that's exactly what it is. Those guys need those reps. And like I said, they use it as evaluation pieces. They use it as competition. And frankly, use that as an opportunity to reward some of these guys for what they do, 6 days a week on the practice field too. That's part of it, right? I mean, some of these guys bust their humps on the scout team or whatever, trying to get the first team ready. It's called a reward, man. Like, get them on the field. Let them feel that. Let them, get a sense of what it's like to be on the field in front of 80,000, fans. I don't have a problem with that either. Reward those guys for the hard work that they put in.
Absolutely. That is, a big part of what the whole thing is all about. And, again, like this, the line of questioning, because it started with one or two, and then, it's like, I think it set a record for, like guys piggybacking on that last question or following up on that question from before. There were a lot of questions along these lines about this whole philosophy in the second half and how you handle all this different stuff. And part of it is also Freeman's focus on, okay, you're up in the game and now you've got a lot of reserves in the second half, but you're still actually trying to win the second half.
It's a sign of handling success. And I think that was important. It was something we really talked about at halftime of the Purdue game, right? Is that I told us the greatest lesson we learned from the NIU game was we weren't ready to handle success. Well, how can you show during a game you're ready to handle success is that you can be up at halftime and go out there with the same mindset that you did to start the game. And it's easy to say, for me, it's one play, one life, right? Stay in the moment, win the moment. But as you look at the totality of a game, that's a way you can tell, hey, is this group able to handle success?
And again, I think you talk about the mindset shift and going back to Purdue, which obviously came right after Northern Illinois, and they're up so handily in that game, and they end up scoring 66 points, obviously, in that game, and you cross 50 points in this game. And by the way, when you look at some of the point totals that Notre Dame is starting to put up, it gets a little bit more impressive every week, but we'll talk about that in a little bit rapid fire as well. So I don't know if it's just your thoughts on hearing that. I like the focus. I like the because again, either you're locked in or you're not. And it's like, it's not like we're just taking this for granted. We're not approaching this kind of stuff as garbage time. We're out there with a purpose, and we actually want to make sure we're continuing to win and look, it's a mindset shift, as a lot of people have pointed out before. It is keeping the pedal down.
Sure.
By Marcus Freeman is a mindset shift from the guy who thought he was everybody's best friend and, Mr. Nice Guy by not running up the score. And I'm not saying that Marcus Freeman is out there running up the score, but he's, again, like he's keeping his team focused on the ultimate goal every week and not just, taking the pedal off and letting them coast. I like it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And, you got to be careful with the potential coach speak with the, it's 0-0 when we go back out there, guys, and, that kind of crap. But, I do think it's a culture thing at this point. I think they expect to go out there and actually win games and kind of bully the other team. I mean, look, I don't, as a fan, I don't necessarily mind it with some of the unsportsmanlike penalty. The guys were still bringing it, man. I don't really have an issue with that. They're fired up. They want to protect their teammates. They're getting after it. I really don't have a problem with a lot of that because there have been times where we have complained that Notre Dame looks disinterested at times. They don't look disinterested right now to me. And that's from kickoff until those 000s on the board. This team is in it, man. And they're also defending each other. They have a swagger about it. This team is in a good place right now.
So, look, when Jeremiah Love scored his touchdown early in the fourth quarter, it made it 38-3, right? So, Brent is saying, where did it go? Brent is saying there's style points. And I just, is it really style points when it's the reserves?
No.
Doing most of the scoring? Do you consider that style points?
I don't. I don't
think I do either.
Points. I think at the end of the day,
I think it's style points if you're keeping your starters in for an extra series and and trying to score a touchdown in that situation. Points. Right. Exactly.
Make sure of it. There was no guarantee the second team was going to score on Florida State's first team. There was no guarantee of that. I mean, how many times did a walk-on touch the football in that drive? At least 4 that I can remember. Right. So those aren't style points to me. And obviously the Luke Talich pick 6 isn't style points.
Right.
I mean, that's a kid making a play and he's not going to
That's my point. The offense, after Jeremiah Love's last touchdown, the offense scored 1 touchdown. Talich had a pick 6.
Right.
So
it's another 14 points.
And there was still 11 minutes to go in the game when Love scored his touchdown. So there was still a lot of time to go, most of the fourth quarter to go still.
Exactly. And I think, look, does 52-3 look better than 35-3 or whatever it was? Yeah, 100%. But that's okay. I mean, they didn't do it by like rubbing their face in it and, Riley Leonard, hey, let's pad Riley Leonard's stats and let him throw a couple more touchdowns or, something along those lines. Like that didn't happen. They took him out of the game. They were all out of the game. Backup line, walk-on running backs. Like those aren't style points.
Well, someone just said that they thought they left the starters in too long. And again, like you look, okay, it's 31-3. I mean, that's a 4-touchdown lead. That to me, we've seen crazier comebacks. I mean, like if you watched any Miami games this season,
like
there
was a lot of time left.
I realized Miami's luck finally ran out against Georgia Tech, and that's good for a lot of different people, Notre Dame included. But like, there's still a lot of even 4 touchdowns at the start of the fourth quarter. Like that, there's a lot of time left. All it takes is a couple fluky things to happen, and then you're regretting. And you would much rather leave the starters in a series too long than pull them out too early and have something stupid happen. And then, again, like you see this more in high school, but you've seen it happen before where a coach then it's like he's putting the starters back in, and then you talk about a shift in mindset and all that kind of stuff when you're trying to put them back in, after you've taken them out, whatever else. So,
right.
Yeah. I didn't think they left him in too long personally.
I don't either.
What do you think about this one? Brent wants Dion Colzie to start.
Nope.
This week.
Nope. He's a backup for a reason.
I think if he's qualified, he'd be out there already.
Correct. Look, Notre Dame is 9 games into the season at this point. They're going to play the best guys that they've got. They're going to play the guys that they best think give them the opportunity to make the playoff and make a run. Dion Colzie isn't that guy. I mean, it is what it is. And I think he has accepted that, and he's in on the goal line package. I mean, you can consider that a starter. That's fine. But he, whatever the coaches are looking for, he hasn't shown it. I'll just say that.
DK says that means he starts on Saturday.
Well, he starts on Saturday if the defense gets a turnover and it's on the 5-yard line going in.
I mean, if he wants to be on special, if they want to start him on special teams or something,
right?
Fine. Like, I don't think, especially when you're talking about big time college football and trying to, get a playoff spot, all those different kind of things, like starting seniors, not the way to go. I don't think that's it.
Right.
Again, put him on the kickoff team. Okay. Let him play the kickoff team.
Right. Well, he's obviously a guy on the team that they all love. I mean, do you see him all celebrating when he scored the touchdown? Yeah. He's a great guy, and everybody loves him. He's just not a starter.
Joe says you've got beef with Dion.
I got beef with everybody. All right. This is not new.
So Brian is inviting us to his tailgate Saturday. He says he'll be there when the lots open. I will not be there this Saturday.
Right.
Like this past week was my final home game, unless there is a playoff game that comes up in December, because women's basketball, we are going to Lafayette University in Easton, Pennsylvania.
Ooh.
We are leaving Saturday afternoon for a Sunday game, so I won't be able to be there, unfortunately, for the tailgate or the Virginia. Trevor's going to be out there in my seat instead.
All right, and we will see what the day holds for me. I don't know. This might be a fun little Saturday. See how it goes.
Little Home Depot action.
Little Home Depot, a little Bed Bath & Beyond. I don't know.
DK's just messing with you now.
Oh, yeah. He's just poking the bear.
Mm-hmm.
How about this? Yeah, I do think he should start. How about no? He will start.
Oh, okay. Playing Jedi mind games. No. I tell you what, speaking of women's basketball trips, I was over in West Lafayette for that Purdue game last night.
Talk about a non-competitive game. Holy
Woodshed. I could not believe how quickly it got out of hand.
Night. It was a 20-point game at the end of the first quarter, wasn't it?
It was 23 points. It was 32-9 at one point. And then, it got a little bit. What was the score at the quarter? I've got the thing up. 28-7. So I guess that was by the early in the second quarter.
Okay.
28-7. So they were up by 21 at the end of the first quarter. But Sonia Citron came back last night, so that was
he looked good.
That was nice.
Leah King looked good.
Man,
she's got that mid range, and then she was making some plays. And
I tell you what, I was talking to Carlos Knox. He was doing the post game show with me last night, and the ball just finds Leah King, no matter where she is, whether it's a rebound, whether it's, she had some steals last night. The ball just finds her, and because she is in the right place all the time.
It was, it was a lot of fun to watch, to be perfectly honest with you. Gosh, the name is, I'm drawing a blank. The freshman, the big
Koval.
She's got a little sass to her. I kind of like that, man. I like my big to have a little sass.
She and that, they were both freshmen. The girl from Purdue, number 35, McCarthy. Hey. They're both Fred. They were out there banging around.
I liked it.
And I don't know what happened. If it was easier, like if you were still watching.
I was.
They were like getting ready to inbound, and one of the officials went up and said something to Koval, and then they inbounded, and like boom, right away he blew the whistle. She did something, and he hit her with a foul right away.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the technical. I don't know what happened on that one. The technical, I think she had some words of celebration after the block.
Yeah,
I believe a little taunting action,
right.
But you know what? I'm okay with it because it was not a close game at that point, and she was getting fired up, man. Like, I loved it.
Did you think Olivia Miles, did you think that was an intentional foul when she went for that block on that girl and got her?
No.
I didn't either. They showed the replay once up on the big board, and I just, she was basically going for the block and just got her on the forearm, it looked like to me. I was shocked that they called intentional.
Olivia Miles is not the kind of person that's going to intentionally foul, especially in a situation like that game was the entire time. I just don't see that. All I know is Olivia Miles looks better than she did a year ago.
A year and a half ago, whatever it was.
Yeah. I mean,
you wouldn't know that she missed a whole year. The way
oh my gosh. I mean, that behind the back pass, I know it didn't end up being an assist, but that was awesome. It's like, she's not even trying. It's just like, whoop. And it was like in stride. I mean, this team is going to be a lot of fun to watch. That's the be all end all here. This team is going to be a lot of fun.
And that's the scariest thing is they're not at full strength yet. They just got Citron back, and they really, you could tell that they didn't want to push it too hard, especially when they got the big lead, like she was still kind of sitting off and on with the ankle and all that stuff. There's some bigger games coming up here in the very near future. Miles ended up with ACC Player of the Week. But, I mean, the scary thing about this team is they don't have Maddie Westbeld right now. They don't have Liza Carlin right now either, because they both got, their own injuries. Carlin is, for people who keep asking, and it's fine that you ask, but Carlin is supposed to be back. Like within the next few weeks, there's still no definite timeline on it, but she's still in a walking boot. There's nothing broken or anything like that. Just, want to let it heal up. And especially when the numbers are where they are, you don't want to push anyone to try to come back too soon, because then you just end up hurting yourself even more big picture. But I mean, once they get Westbeld and Carlin back, like that is just going to be so scary.
And when was the last time Notre Dame had two bigs that you can really just push the ball to and have attitude to them? And like, yeah, this is going to be fun to watch. Their bench is so incredibly deep as it is, and those two are obviously not healthy. And it's not like they're digging all that deep. They don't have to. She's got so many options. Niele Ivey has so many options for this team that it's exciting. And I realize Purdue is not a top 25 team. I think they were picked 13th in the Big Ten, but it's still Purdue. It's still a bit of a rivalry with Notre Dame. You're still on their home court. And, if they want to schedule Notre Dame, they want that smoke, they're going to get it.
Hey, I mean, to their credit, because Katie Gerald's, it's amazing to me, doing all those Notre Dame Purdue games back in the day, because they used to play every year. It was one year it was in South Bend, the next year it was in West Lafayette. And Katie Gerald's, I obviously remember her playing. That's the last time Purdue beat Notre Dame was in 2005 when Gerald's was a junior. It's like, that's how long it's been. It's
That's
just
nuts.
It's insane. Nuts. I know.
Predates every one of my kids. It's awesome.
And they put up a thing in their pregame video on the board. It was basically kind of a recruiting pitch. It's like different players, and they've got, in addition to Gerald's, they've got 2 assistants on the staff who played for Purdue as well. Just like Neil Ivey with Notre Dame with Sherelle Allen and Michaela Mabry. But and by the way, those 6 coaches have played in a total of, I think it's 27 games, in the Notre Dame Purdue rivalry.
Okay.
But in that Purdue video, I didn't realize Purdue is the only Big Ten school to win a women's basketball national championship. And that was in 1999. They're still the only Big Ten school to win a national championship in women's basketball. That was 2 years before Notre Dame beat Purdue, obviously, for the 2001 national championship. But those were 2 elite programs for several years. And Purdue has obviously gone the opposite direction in recent years, whereas Notre Dame has obviously just continued to ascend.
They have continued their dominance.
It's kind of hard to remember when Purdue was still fairly.
Well, the problem is, Sean, it's really easy for me to remember, which means I'm old. That's the problem.
That's all it means, right?
I didn't realize Purdue was so down. I'll be honest with you. Yeah. I didn't realize they were so down because I remember when they won in 99. I remember the 2001 championship. Like, that's Purdue to me. You know what I mean? And obviously it hasn't been that way for quite some time.
Andy Saylor said KK has a leg injury. That's the first they said about that. You might remember Bransford announced that back before the season started. She's going to miss the entire season.
The whole year.
She's not going to be back this year. So TD Fernandez wants to know if Niele ran up the score. I've got to say no, considering she still only had 8 total players available, including Sarah Cernugel, who played 4 minutes last night. And Emma Risch played 21 minutes after she missed most of last season with an injury, so. And she looked like she started to shake off a little bit of rust that she probably had.
She's number 2,
game.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I was trying to figure out, I was like, who's number 2?
Right. And then she was hurt most of last year.
Yep. I figured, like, process of elimination, I figured it out, but like I didn't realize who it was at first. So. Yeah.
Good catch, Andre. You're right. Maryland does have one. They were still in the ACC when they won it. So in terms of like schools, like the configuration now, because USC's in it, they've obviously won national championships a long time ago, back in the 80s. But in terms of like actually winning national championships as a Big Ten school, Purdue still it.
The Big Ten patch.
It ain't rocket science. Was impressed with the Ukrainian Kate Koval. 5-star. Yeah, she again, like she's the only, if you want to call it a silver lining, is the fact, like with some of these other players being out, like she gets to play even more right now. So she's getting even more experience right now with some of these other players being out.
She's looking pretty good for her age.
By the way, I got home last night in a little more than an hour and a half.
What were you doing, sir? Breaking land speed records or what?
Do you remember, this has been 10 or 12 years since we went to we covered a Notre Dame Purdue football game together over there. I want to say it took us more than 2.5 hours to get home.
Yes.
Does that sound right?
Yes. 100%.
Did they have Highway 25 now? They've got it. I don't know when the last time you've been over there.
It's been a minute. Yeah.
It's all, well, not all of it. A big chunk of it is now 4 lanes, like 2 on each side. I don't think they had that when you and I, it seemed like it was just a lot of windy, dark roads and,
Yes.
Getting behind,
being no good way to get down there.
Gunther and, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
There. So you still have to go through Logansport, and some of the other small towns as you get closer to South Bend, but as you get closer to West Lafayette, it's 4 lanes, so it's expanded. So it's very nice. I will say, was I over the speed limit? I might have been, but
slightly.
Hour and a half, hour 35, hour 40 tops. That was
pretty good. And I mean, you're south of town up here, so that helps you.
It does. Yeah, because that cuts about 15 minutes off what I used to have as well.
Yeah.
Good
But
point.
Still, it's impressive. It's impressive, sir.
I felt like it as well. I was happy. I was very happy.
Yeah, I bet. Because that, you probably didn't get on the road till about 11 o'clock, 10:30.
Well, I don't even remember. But I'll just say I got home at a better time than I thought I was.
Yeah, there you go.
So
there you go.
Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
Monday version, baby. Let's hit it.
All right, so here we go. College football playoff ranking number 2 comes out on Tuesday. So I thought, especially for the podcast listeners, like the people who download the audio, Jesse and I did predictions last week, but by the time Wednesday came out, it's like old news and you know what it's actually going to be. So let's try to predict what Tuesday's rankings, the new rankings, are going to look like. Now, this is not what we want. We're trying to predict what we think the committee is actually going to do with this thing.
Yes.
Okay.
I did top 10.
All right. Hang on a second.
Okay.
Well, there are 12 teams that make it, right? So
I'm aware. I mean, all right. I'll add a couple.
Okay.
Let's see here. I'll add that one. And who am I missing? Let's see here. I will add, you know what? I'll add this one. Okay. I'm ready. So
let's start at the back end.
Okay.
And work up, because I think we're going to be at least the top 2 or 3 spots. I bet we're pretty on the nose.
Probably true.
I went all the way down to 15.
Man, you're an overachiever.
I know. I had to try today. So at 15, at 15, I've got Texas A&M.
Okay.
Because there's some movement around. 14, I've got Georgia falling all the way to 14. One of my 2 biggest questions are, how far are they going to drop Georgia and Miami?
Right? I think that's what everybody's big one is, right?
So I've got Georgia at 14. I've got Miami at 13. So just starting with that. Do you have either one of them or both of them in your top 12?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Both of them.
And that's fair, but.
And again, I want to remind everybody, this is what I think is going to happen, not what I want.
Correct. We're doing what we think the committee is going to do with this, not what we necessarily think that it's going to be. Jesse will be here tomorrow, and he'll give you, here's my Jesse emotion top 12.
All right.
So who's your number 12, Vince?
Ole Miss.
That's what I've got.
Yeah.
All right. We both got Ole Miss at number 12 after that big win over Georgia. So that means you've still got Georgia ahead of Ole Miss, even though Ole Miss has got the head-to-head.
I do. So I got my Miami at 11.
You've got Miami at 11. I've got SMU at 11. I bumped them up a little bit, because again, maybe I was, just too, this and, by the book kind of thing. I don't know, but
I get it. 10, I've got Georgia.
You've got Georgia.
Yeah.
Okay. I have Boise State at number 10. So, again, this is, Boise State's only loss is Oregon. So do they, because it's an SEC team, even with 2 losses, do they keep Georgia ahead of all these other teams who have been kind of steadily working their way up?
Right.
Going to be a big question.
It is.
So I've got Boise State there at number 10.
I've got Alabama at 9.
That's who I've got. I've got Alabama at 9 as well. So we're both the same. So far we've got Alabama and Ole Miss on the same spots. Okay.
Number 8 is where the Irish fall in.
That's what I've got.
Look at that, man. We're right there.
Okay. Trending. Yeah. So I'm going to guess. Go ahead.
I was going to say, my next one is BYU. And
we're the same there too.
I don't think BYU should be there because I feel like the referees won them that game. But they still won it and they're still undefeated. And so I think that's where they end up slotting in. that was a sham. Like, that was an absolute sham. They lost that game fair and square. But
again, Vince, if you'd looked at the outline, this will come up at the end of rapid fire.
I know, but we're talking about the rankings.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
I did look at the outline. I know that it's coming up, but I just feel like I had to say that at that point. But I've got BYU at 7.
Okay, so John says SMU won't be in the playoff. Again, we've got another question coming up sort of related to this. So we'll kind of save that here for just a second. So here's what we've got so far. We both got Ole Miss at number 12. Vince has got Miami at number 11. I've got SMU in that spot. Vince has got Georgia at number 10. I've got Boise State. We both have Alabama at number 9. Both have Notre Dame at number 8. Both have BYU at number 7. Number 6, Indiana.
Tennessee.
Okay, I've got Indiana in this spot.
I gave IU a lot of props in this particular poll. Again, not what I think, but what I think they're gonna. I think they're gonna give an undefeated Big Ten team some love because they beat a blue blood in Michigan.
Even though the blue blood isn't that good,
I know
this year.
I know that, and you know that.
Right.
I'm not sure the committee is aware of that.
Right.
That's all.
So you're not. I take it you're not going to have SMU in your top 12 based on the way you're going right now, even though their only loss is to BYU.
Yeah. I mean, they would have been probably 13, actually, as I'm looking at this. But, yeah, not yet.
See, and this is why I've got Miami out and I've got SMU in.
Fair. So I just – the biggest problem for me is that is a massive drop from where they were. I'm not saying they don't deserve it.
I get it.
You know what I mean?
If you look at the human polls this week, there were some massive drops. These teams dropped 8 and 9 spots.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. I don't know what if the committee is going to drop teams that drastically. I think they're going to want to try to pat themselves on the back a little bit too much.
The thing with me is Miami was living on the edge. They were flirting with disaster for a long time, and you can only do that for so long, and it finally caught up to them. And, again, like as you look at data points, Notre Dame just beat that same Georgia Tech team a couple of weeks ago. So, like a check mark for Notre Dame. And, like SMU, their only loss is to BYU. That's still a better loss than what Miami just had to Georgia Tech. And again, the fact that they'd been kind of dancing with that for a little bit. And it really, to me, it also kind of confirmed that other than Cam Ward, there's just not a whole lot of substance to that Miami.
And there hasn't been all year, but they've been winning. So they got credit for that,
Exactly.
All right.
Okay. All right. So who's your number 5?
Penn State.
You've got Penn State at number 5.
Yep.
I have Tennessee at number 5. So you've got Tennessee at number 6. I've got them at number 5, and I've actually got Penn State at number 4. So that means we'll have a difference here too. Who do you have at 4?
That's where I have IU.
Okay. You got IU all the way up to number 4. I've got them at number 6.
And there's a couple of reasons for that, right? I think that they want to absolutely prop up the Ohio State IU game. And that is now going to be, not that it wasn't a big matchup before, but now it's number 2 versus number 4. Well, I just gave away who my number 2 was. Not surprising. They were number 2 last week. But that's also one of the reasons I think that they keep Penn State where they are, because they want to prop up somebody. Somebody in the Big Ten needs to be propped, because I don't think the Big Ten's all that great. And right now, that team is Ohio State. Now, if Ohio State loses to IU, then they just probably flip, and Ohio State will drop a little bit further. But they've got to prop up. They got to prop up the strength of schedule, and so that's why I think IU and Penn State are going to be where they are.
Okay, so I'm going to guess we've got the exact same 1, 2, 3. Would be my guess.
Based on what I just, yeah.
Texas at number 3.
Yep.
Ohio State at number 2.
Yep.
Oregon still at number 1.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That's what I got.
Do you have a major difference from, like, if this was yours? Would you still have Notre Dame at number 8, or would you have them higher, for example? Vince, would Notre Dame be your number 1 team this week?
No. I saw that on there, and I wasn't sure if it was a typo. To be perfectly honest, you want to talk about reading the outline.
I meant to actually leave that off and then put it on afterwards. I accidentally included it in yours. So
I would not have them at number 1. No. The problem is I think they're better than BYU. I think they're better than Tennessee. I think they're better than Penn State. But they got to keep winning at this point. Like BYU should have lost, right? But they won. They've got a 0 in the loss column. And I don't think that the committee is going to change that. I personally, when just looking at the teams playing, I would probably have Notre Dame in like the 5-6 range, to be perfectly honest with you.
Well, I mean, look, Navy was still ranked when Notre Dame played them. They scored 51 points against them. Georgia Tech, who just beat Miami, Notre Dame scored 31 points against them. Against those two teams alone, that's 82 points that they have scored, they scored in those two games. So like you talk about a team that's going in the right direction right now. And I want to look back. I need to look and see. So Texas A&M gave up 44 to South Carolina. They gave up 24 points to Mississippi State in a win over Mississippi State. So Notre Dame's 23 points is still the third most scored against Texas A&M this season. So like when you look at, kind of like, quality defense, they went against and all that different kind of, look, Northern Illinois loss is still.
Oh, it means something.
And it's still going to be something that a lot of people are not going to be able to get over. And it is still something that you have to you sort of have to figure out, okay, what do you do with Notre Dame because they do have that loss? But, again, like when you look at recency and what they're doing right now, just like we said last week, it's one thing you still have to beat Florida State, but you can't struggle in beating Florida State. I know a lot of people weren't necessarily happy with, how it looked for parts of the first half, but they ended up scoring 52 points and only giving up 3.
Right. Right. I mean, look, I still think things are probably going to work out above them. I think that there's a decent chance Penn State loses to Minnesota in a couple of weeks. I think IU is going to lose to Ohio State. I think Tennessee is going to lose to Georgia. All of those things will help Notre Dame, obviously. But again, if they're going to be slotted in the 8 hole there, I'm okay with that for right now. I really am. They're still within spitting distance of where they want to be. Now, if you war gamed this out into the bracket, right, and the actual seeding, I think that pushes Notre Dame down into a visiting team in that first round.
Because they're sitting there at number 8. Because let me see, Big Ten. Basically, you've got Ohio State sitting there at number 2. So
you've got IU that's going to get bumped out of there too.
Right. So one of those. Well, I guess my point is, right, one of those Big Ten teams would be the number 5 seed, basically. Most
correct.
likely.
And the other one, I mean, right now there's.
And the other one's going to be a little bit lower than that at whatever.
There's
point.
3 Big Ten teams in the top 4 right now.
Yeah, and
they're all going to get bumped out of that top 4. You know what I mean? Like now, there's not going to be 3 Big Ten teams in the final rankings because 2 of them are going to play. Well, I'm sorry, I have 3 Big Ten teams in the top 4 in my little rankings, right? That won't be there because
I've got 4 in the top 6.
Yeah, I mean, and Ohio State is going to play IU. That's going to change things, obviously. So, I mean, some things are going to work its way through. And then conference championships won't necessarily knock somebody out, but I think it will affect the seedings.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think, a loser of a conference championship could be a potential game hoster going in and then maybe have to go on the road if they get beat soundly in a conference championship game. You know what I mean? So they won't be out, but I think their road might get tougher.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see, as Antoine is saying, I'm really curious to see where Miami is ranked. I can't, like I've got Miami falling all the way down to number 11. I don't think they'll be ahead of Notre Dame, but that's just what I think. And I'm like, what happens with SMU as well? Will SMU sort of make up that ground? Yeah. Like the thing with SMU, the thing with SMU, it's not that they're really, from a resume standpoint, not that much different than IU. And in fact, they've got a better strength of schedule than IU. The only difference between them is SMU has the loss to BYU. So at least they can say they have a loss to a team that's in contention. But, my point is, even though they have a loss, they've got a better strength of schedule than Indiana. And as a result, they've got one more loss than Indiana. Right.
Yeah.
So I kind of think, SMU, I'm really curious to see if they make up a little bit of ground. They don't have a ton to make up, but if they kind of jump up a little bit, because I do think they got a little bit of disrespect last week with their ranking.
Fair enough.
And now there's reason enough to put them ahead of Miami as well after Miami's loss.
That is actually very true. I could definitely see that happen.
Scale of 1 to 10, after Miami's loss to Georgia Tech, rate the ACC's chances to get 2 playoff bids.
A 2.5. I mean, I really don't think that they're going to, because, if you take the top 2 teams, right, you've got SMU and you've got Miami playing against each other in the conference championship. And if, one of those teams is going to get a second loss, and I think they're out at that point, because every talking head out there will say, well, the Big Ten and the SEC are better than the ACC, and 2-loss teams in those conferences deserve to get in over a 2-loss team in the ACC. So I think it's a very, very low probability.
I do too. I'd actually put it at a 1. I just don't see. Yeah. I think it's going to be a winner take all in the ACC championship game. I don't see a second bid. The only chance they had at getting 2 bids is if Miami had stayed undefeated.
Correct.
And then SMU or Clemson, whoever it ends up being, ended up beating Miami in the conference championship game. Now, with all of them having at least 1 loss, and remember, SMU is still undefeated in conference play. Their only loss, obviously, was a non-conference game to BYU, but they all still have 1 overall loss. I just don't see a second bid, going to the ACC.
Nope.
So, again, that's something that works in Notre Dame's favor as well.
Completely agree. And I wanted to look to see what the remaining SMU schedule is. So they've got Boston College, Virginia, and Cal. Chances of them winning out, I think, are pretty solid.
Should be pretty good.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, what about 25 hours from now, we'll get the second release.
I'm excited.
We'll see what it looks like.
Yeah, well, it's at 8:30 tomorrow night, actually.
Oh, is it later tomorrow night? Later. Are they doing it like halftime of the Kansas-Michigan State game or something?
Probably. I just saw that it was at 8:30, so that would make sense.
They must be.
That would make sense.
Big win for the Jayhawks, by the way. Speaking of Jayhawks, we'll stick this with football.
Yes. They got a chance to make some noise.
Don't rule out my Jayhawks as a spoiler in this whole thing, the way they've been playing the last couple of weeks. They've got BYU coming up. Yes. BYU cannot overlook Kansas now.
That's all I'm saying. Look, I was high on Kansas coming into the season. They have let me down, Sean Stiers. This is their chance.
Tell me about it.
This is their chance to make amends.
Yes.
Right now. They got to go on the road to do it. But come on, baby.
Held off Iowa State completely, as if Iowa State still had any chance after getting their first loss the week before. They are completely toast right now after losing to Kansas last weekend. So that's right. Jayhawks got a chance to spoil the party here at the end. I love it.
Because I think BYU dropped. I think they dropped pretty hard. But again, obviously the Big 12 is going to get their champion in. But who the heck knows who that's going to be at this point? I mean, I don't know, Sean. I think you could replace your last question with ACC with Big 12, and I would put it at like a 1 as well.
If BYU had lost, I think that was the case. But if BYU wins out, Colorado is red hot right now. Yeah. And if you get those 2 teams in the conference championship game and Colorado wins, I think that BYU is getting in as well, most likely. I don't think
that
they would fall that far, like especially, depending on how high BYU kind of climbs these next couple of weeks. If they're sitting there at 5 or 6 going into conference championship game, and then they would lose to Colorado, I don't think they're going to fall all the way out of the top 12. I think they're the 12 seed at the worst in that situation.
Listen, Sean, I'm going to need Kansas to go 2-0 over the next 2 weeks. Okay. Do you know who they have in 2 weeks?
Kansas?
Yeah.
Well, I know they've got BYU. I'm trying to remember who they have at the end of the season. Do they have the Buffaloes at the end of the year?
Next week. It's the second to last game.
Wow. So they've got, that's right. They've got Colorado and they've got BYU both coming up. Making you happy.
So come on, man. Kansas can just blow the Big 12 up here over the next couple of weeks. Okay. They can start stealing chances.
And look, like the way they've been scoring, like against Colorado, I think they're gonna put some points on the board against the Buffaloes.
Look, if Kansas goes 2-0 over the next 2 weeks, Sean, I think you're looking the Big 12 right in the face of not being one of the top 4 seeds.
Are you willing to say you would streak around your house at midnight if Kansas wins both of these games?
I would be pretty happy if that was the case. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie.
I'll buy you a Red Hot Chili Peppers sock. You remember that from like back in the 80s, early 90s when they were dancing around with the socks on?
I do.
All right.
I do.
All right.
I have,
Everybody was here. Joe heard it. We all heard it.
It's poor kids.
I'll buy you a tube sock, and I'll at least let you go that direction.
Thank you.
All right.
I appreciate that. And the problem is I've got 2 sets of ears just paying attention right now too. So
are you saying you might not be allowed back in the school if
I
that
don't
were
know.
to happen?
We'll set the scene.
Vince is blood sugar sex magic. I mean, that's what he is right there. All right. So Marcus Freeman was asked today if he might like to have more night games after experiencing all that atmosphere Saturday night at Notre Dame Stadium.
It's a double-edged sword, as they say. The atmosphere environment is different at night games. We know that. It's just, it's a little bit, I don't know if it's the lights, it's the crowd, I don't know what it is. It's electric. But there's also a cost on the back end of that, right? And maybe it's that. I don't know if anybody can see what you just did, but maybe it's that. But the back end of that, man, is the lack of rest, right? You lose the valuable sleep and recovery that you need post-game on Saturdays, especially a night away game, but even at home. And I think our players, obviously, Sunday, they have their day off, so they can try to recover a little bit. But, coaches, we're up and we're at it. We got to go. And so that's the cost of having some of those electric games at night. But, again, if Pete wants to schedule more night games, I'm all for it.
Come on, man. You get all the sleep you need when you're dead. I mean, let's go. Let's go. Come on. What do you think? More night games?
On the same page. All right. We're on the same page.
But we're old. Like, they're young. Those players, I realize the players, 300 days a year, they're training for this and the whole thing. They're young. They get over it fast, right? It's like, old guys like us, you drink more Mountain Dew. I drink more coffee. I mean, I drank a whole pot of coffee, I think, today after, late nights, 2 nights in a row.
It was tough for you.
So what do you think? You want more night games at Notre Dame Stadium?
No, I'm not going to die. I'm going to die on that hill. I do not want more night games. I do think, obviously the fans are more electric. I think the players enjoy it. I mean, obviously if that's the case, then, as a coach, you're like, yeah, let's roll it up. Let's do some more night games and things like that. But do we all remember what happened last year when they had that string of night games?
That's what I was going to say. Like,
didn't end well, guys.
They've been very fortunate this year. They've only had one road night game this year,
right?
The Texas A&M game,
right?
Like that's usually if the opponent is worth playing when Notre Dame goes on the road, ESPN and CB, they all want Notre Dame at night.
Yep.
And
they were that team last year when they got to the end of that string of night games, they were done. They were exhausted.
Yeah.
It's not great for the team. Yes, in once in a blue moon, at once every 4 games maybe, or, something like that. Okay, let's talk about it. But you don't want a bunch of night games in a row, man. Like that will wear on you. And it did on last year's team. So people have very convenient memories of night games, and it didn't end well last year. So, there is some rhyme or reason to why I don't necessarily like a bunch of night games. But the 3:55 bedtime wasn't cool. But it does wear on the team and the coaching staff and like the support staff and everything else.
I mean, look, we know we're going to have Notre Dame and USC next year. Is going to be a night game.
Sure.
Like Texas A&M
could probably be a night game.
Probably a good chance of a night game. So that's 2 right there. Like 2 is enough. Completely fine with that. Like,
because you're going to get some away night games too. Like those are going to happen, right? I mean, let's be honest. Of the final 4 games of the season, 3 of them are probably going to be night games.
Yeah.
You're right. I
mean, and still important to remember that even though the Yankee Stadium game is at Yankee Stadium, it is going to be a primetime game. It's going to kick off
at 7 o'clock game.
So,
and it's an NBC game. So for all you Todd Blackledge lovers, he's going to be back, baby.
That's what, do you think we'll actually get him for that, or you think they'll just go back to Hicks and Garrett?
It's a night game. I think he does the night games.
I don't know I don't know what the Big Ten matchups are in a couple of weeks, because as of now, I don't think there've been no like announcers like officially announced or anything.
Right, but doesn't that crew usually do the NBC night game?
This is only the second year of it. I haven't. I mean, they are considered the number 1 crew, like the primetime crew, but they also, don't forget, have Peacock and stuff, so I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't think they'd stick their quote unquote number 1 crew on Peacock.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know what I mean? Maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, it's going to be 2 ranked teams, so
this is true.
I would think that there would be a very good shot of it. We'll see. If you didn't get your fill of Todd Blackledge this first time, you've got more opportunities, baby.
Because right now, the Fox games have been announced for that weekend.
Have they?
So Ohio State IU is at noon. Maryland, Iowa is on the Big Ten Network at noon. And Michigan Northwestern is on FS1 at 3:30. The other, let's see. And then Michigan State and Purdue is a Friday night game at 8 o'clock on Fox, which nobody cares about. And then you've got 4 other matchups. Penn State, Minnesota, Illinois, Rutgers, Wisconsin, Nebraska, USC, UCLA, and those are all TBD at the moment.
So we don't know what time they're going to take place.
Correct. Yeah. They're on Saturday, but not what
But
time.
there is still the possibility that you could have it like on NBC in the middle of the afternoon.
100%.
Right.
Yeah. The only thing we know for sure is that Notre Dame's playing at night.
Right.
Yeah.
Fill in the blank, Vince. Just fill in the blank. No, Notre Dame's offensive performance against Florida State was blank.
Started out average, ended up above average. They were a little rusty to start things off, and then I think they kind of got it figured out. I think there's a few things that maybe contributed to the rust, maybe coming off the bye to a degree. I think they were trying a few different things offensively that I don't know that was necessary to try, or maybe I don't know. But they didn't look very, crisp right off the bat. And so, but then they ended up, scoring on a bunch of consecutive drives. So they ended up just fine. So they were average to above, and then moving to above average.
Yeah, it was a little clunky early on, but by the time you sit back, and this is why, I just when people start, oh, this offense is horrible again. What's going on? It's the first quarter. When I see this social media stuff in the first quarter, it's like, put it away.
Right.
Put it away. Let this thing play out. Let it breathe a little bit. I mean, they end up rushing for over 200 yards, and again, Jadarian Price, great big explosive run, always awesome to see. He ends up with 95 yards. Riley Leonard ends up with 70 yards, you didn't have this one big, sort of massive rushing game, but as a team, once again, you're over 200 yards, 453 total yards in the offense.
Yeah.
The offense by itself, 45 points without Luke Talic's touchdown at the end. So just ended up being very, very impressive, pretty balanced overall. I agree with what you're saying. It looked like the combination of coming out of a bye, and it definitely looked like, kind of one of those weeks that maybe, like they stuck too much with against NIU. It's like, let's just do what works. How about we do that? Let's do what works, and we'll score some points and, save some of that other stuff for later. But overall, came away pretty impressed when it was all said and done.
They did what they needed to do.
I'm going to go to this last one. When are you and Brian starting upon further review, by the way? Do we know yet? 7 o'clock? All right. We'll go ahead and finish with this last one then.
All right.
Where is it? If I can find it. So, Utah Athletic Director Mark Harlan, not happy after his team's loss to BYU Saturday night. He was ticked about BYU being called for pass interference, which negated their sack, the Utah sack that would have effectively ended the game. And, big upset over their rival in the Holy War out there. So I've got the audio of Harlan from his impromptu press conference after the game. Now, the level starts a little bit hot here because this took it like one of the TV guys, had the sound. So the level starts a little soft. They get it figured out here. So kind of bear with it for a couple of seconds here.
For 12 years, this game was absolutely stolen from us. We were excited about being in the Big 12, but tonight I am not. We won this game. Someone else stole it from us. Very disappointed. I will talk to the commissioner. This was not fair to our team. I'm disgusted by the professionalism of the officiating crew tonight. Thank you.
We're excited to be in the Big 12, but we're not excited to be in the Big 12 tonight. What do you think? Utah AD Vince firing it up.
I hope he gets paid well because he's going to get fined.
Is the school going to pay the fine?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I don't know the answer to that one, and I'm a little nervous for him on that. But, I don't disagree with them. That game was absolutely stolen from them. That was a garbage call that had nothing to do with the play. The quarterback for BYU had zero opportunity to throw that ball because Utah was like heat-seeking missiles off the edge with their front on that kid. He had no chance to throw the football, regardless of whatever happened on the back end. It was a really, 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 really bad call in that moment. I'm sorry, and I am usually on the side of, if it's a foul, call a foul. Doesn't matter what time of the game it is, when it's like basketball or something like that. But I even watched the replay, and I still don't see the penalty.
I mean, you have to look for it. You have to, if you want to go by the letter of the law, okay. I think we've all seen probably a lot worse that goes uncalled quite a bit. You just don't see the athletic director dropping into a hot mic in front of the cameras.
And usually they're not interviewing the athletic director. Like, I'm guessing he went in there and he's like, I'm talking.
He did. Right? The coach was supposed to do his thing. He went in before they ever started and just plopped down and was like, here's the deal. And, I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure Kyle Whittingham appreciates it. I'm sure all the Utah fans and, all the players appreciate it. And he's speaking the truth, man. He's speaking the truth. He was fined $40,000, by the way.
Woo!
$40,000. Honestly, that's not that much when you
for people that make that kind of money.
He went right at the Big 12. Right at the Big 12.
Yes, he did. But you know what? There were opportunities, obviously, after that to stop them and do all these different things, man. But there were a couple of different situations there towards the end where they had him for a safety, but a timeout was called, and then they make the defensive holding call. It's just like, man, did they get bailed out on a couple of different occasions.
I mean, you do nothing to, dissuade, sort of the notion that you're trying to protect your gravy train, the team with the best chance, obviously,
Exactly.
of making it to the college football playoff.
Yes.
Especially when you're talking about a rivalry game. I mean, come on, man.
It was bad. It was real bad. It was really bad, Sean.
Verbad. All right. Well, that's going to do it. Vince has got upon further review coming up with Mr. Driscoll tonight, 7 o'clock. Going to dig in deep to that Notre Dame Florida State game. Looking forward to that. Coming up on tomorrow's show. I don't know if Jesse's going to drag some whiteboard out or not. I suppose I need to hit him up and see if any whiteboard is forthcoming for tomorrow's show. We got plenty on tomorrow's show, though, as well. A lot of stuff that we're going to hit, as we look forward as well to Virginia coming up this week, and college football playoff rankings edition number 2 coming out tomorrow. Appreciate everybody being here. And again, happy Veterans Day to all of our veterans out there. And like I said, I know we've got a lot who watch and listen to our shows. So appreciate you being here. As always, hit the like button before you leave if you would. And we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.